I have crossed an ocean to stand at that gate, and I have told this story more times than I can count, and I still do not tell it the way it deserves. People hear the shape of it and they want the loud parts. They want the part where the proud woman is shamed in front of 1,000 strangers, and they want the gasp that went through the crowd, and they want the picture I took that I will tell you about by and by. I understand the wanting. We are made to crave the moment the mighty fall. But that is not the part I carry. The part I carry is quieter than that, and it happened in the space of about 90 seconds on a warm morning in a country that was not my own, and it changed the way I have lived ever since. So let me tell it properly, from the beginning, the way you tell a thing you have decided is true. I was a schoolteacher then, recently widowed, recently retired, with a small pension and a list of places I had promised my wife I would see while I still had the knees for it. The capital of Mournland was on the list because she had wanted to see it and never had. I will not pretend I was a happy man that summer. I was a man going through the motions of being alive, ticking off cities, eating alone, taking photographs I did not look at. I had a habit by then of arriving early to things so that I would not have to stand in a crowd and feel my aloneness in it. That habit is the only reason I saw what I saw. If I had slept in, if I had lingered over my coffee the way a man with someone to wait for him might, I would have arrived to a packed square and a wall of shoulders, and I would have seen nothing at all. I have thought about that a great deal. The lantern gate stands at the front of Hallowmere Palace, which is the seat of the old kings of Mournland, and the forecourt before it is paved in pale gray cobblestone worn smooth by 3 centuries of feet. There is a long railing of black iron, gilded at the finials, that pens the public back from the parade ground. Beyond the railing the cobbles run clean and empty to the gatehouse, and at the gatehouse, in a stone alcove like a saint in a niche, stands a single sentry of the Carmine Company. I did not know any of those names that morning. I learned them the way you learn the names of a place after it has marked you, going back and reading and asking, wanting to anchor the thing in facts so it would not float away from me. That morning, I knew only that there was a soldier in a long red coat and a tall black cap of fur, white gloves on his hands, a rifle at his side, and that he was so still that, for the first full minute, I genuinely took him for a statue. You will think that is a figure of speech. It is not. I stood at the railing in the early light with perhaps a dozen other early risers, and I looked at the man in the alcove, and I waited for him to shift his weight or scratch his nose or do any of the small involuntary things a living body does, and he did none of them. The sun was already warm. It was going to be a hot day. You could feel it gathering. The man wore a coat of heavy red wool buttoned to the throat, and a chin strap that cut a line under his lip, and that great absurd magnificent cap of black bear fur that must have weighed on his neck like a sack of grain, and he stood in the growing heat as though heat were a rumor he had not heard. I remember thinking, with the cheap cleverness of a tired man, that they must rotate a mannequin in and out to spare the budget. Then a fly landed on his cheek, just under his right eye, and walked across the bridge of his nose, and he did not blink, and I felt the hair stand up on my arms, because a mannequin does not have a fly avoid its eyes, and a living man does not let one walk on him, and here was a living man doing exactly that. I want you to understand the stillness, because everything that came later only means what it means against that stillness. It was not the stillness of a man holding his breath. It was not the rigid, trembling stillness of someone forcing himself. It was a deep, settled, used to its stillness, the stillness of a stone that has been a stone for a long time and expects to go on being one. His eyes were open and fixed on the middle distance, on nothing, on some point above all our heads where the day kept its own counsel. I have seen monks who could not do it. I had a colleague once, a man who taught discipline as if it were a subject, who could not sit through a staff meeting without jiggling his foot. This soldier had taken the ordinary churn of being a human animal, and he had set it down somewhere and walked away from it. And what was left standing in the alcove was something purified, something that had been sanded down to a single idea, and the idea was, I will not move. I am here to not move. My not moving is the whole of my service, and my service is the whole of me. I did not have those words for it then. I have them now. Then I only felt the prickle on my arms and a strange shame, the shame of the slack man in front of the disciplined one, and I lowered my camera, which I had half raised, because it felt like an intrusion to photograph him, like photographing someone at prayer. The crowd thickened as the morning came on. Tour groups arrived behind their guides like schools of fish, all turning at once when the colored umbrella turned. Families spread out along the railing. Children were lifted to sit on the iron crossbar, and parents held their ankles, and the children stared at the red soldier and asked the questions children ask. The loud, honest ones: is he real? Why doesn't he move? Is he allowed to talk? What if he has to sneeze? A guide near me was explaining in a carrying professional voice that the men of the Carmine Company are forbidden to react to the public, that they may not speak, may not smile, may not acknowledge a question or an insult or a kindness, that their discipline is a matter of centuries, and that no provocation, none, is permitted to break it. He said it with relish, the way a man says a thing he has said 500 times and still enjoys. He said that people had tried everything over the years to make a Carmine sentry break, and that none of them ever had, not once, not in living memory, and that this was the pride of the regiment and the wonder of the city. I tell you that the guide said this in those words, perhaps 20 minutes before it happened, because I have come to feel that the world arranges these ironies on purpose, to make sure we are paying attention. It was a little before the changing of the guard, which I gathered happened mid-morning and drew the real crowd, when I noticed the old man. He came in from the eastern side of the square, where there is a long ramp that the city built, I later learned, precisely so that the old and the lame could come to see the gate. He was in a wheelchair, and he was being pushed by a young woman I took to be his granddaughter, and I noticed them because they were moving against the current. Everyone else was pressing forward to claim a place at the rail. This pair was moving slowly, carefully, the young woman steering the chair around the cobble's uneven seams, leaning down now and then to say something to the old man, who would nod or lift one hand a few inches off the armrest in answer. He was very old. I do not say that to be unkind. I say it because it was the first true thing about him, the thing you saw before you saw anything else. He was the kind of old where the body has begun to fold back toward the earth, where the shoulders curl and the head sits forward, and the hands have gone to bone and paper. He wore a suit that had been good once and was clean now, pressed, the collar of his shirt sitting loose around a neck it had been cut to fit a heavier man. There was a row of small medals pinned to his left breast, faded ribbons over old metal, and a cap on his lap that he held with both hands as if it were the only warm thing in the world. His eyes, when the chair turned and the light caught his face, were a pale washed blue, and they were fixed on the red soldier in the alcove with a steadiness that I recognized, because it was the same steadiness the soldier wore. The old man was looking at the young man the way you look at something you used to be. The granddaughter found a place for him near the eastern end of the railing, away from the thickest of the crowd, and she crouched beside the chair, and I was close enough now, having drifted that way without quite deciding to, that I heard some of what passed between them. She had a soft, low voice. She kept it pitched for him alone, but the morning was still and sound carries. "There he is," she said. "You can see him fine from here, Granda. We're early. We've got the best of it before the buses come." The old man said something I did not catch. His voice was a dry rustle, all the strength gone out of it. The kind of voice that costs its owner something to use. "I know," she said. "I know, we're not in a hurry, we've got all the time there is." He lifted one hand off the cap and pointed, a trembling few inches at the alcove, at the red soldier, and he said something else, and this time I caught the end of it, which was, "The same, look at him. He hasn't changed at all." "No," she said gently, "no, he hasn't." I did not understand it then. I thought he was a confused old man mistaking a soldier of 20 for some soldier he had known 60 years gone, and I felt the easy pity you feel for the very old, the pity that is really a kind of distance. I was wrong about him in every way it was possible to be wrong, and I would not learn how wrong until afterward. But even then, even in my wrongness, there was something about the two of them, the old man and the young one, the folded body in the chair and the upright body in the alcove, each of them perfectly still in his own way, that made a knot in my chest I could not account for. I raised my camera and took a photograph of the old man looking at the soldier. It is the only photograph I took that morning that I have ever been able to look at, and I have it framed now, and I will tell you what is in it before I am done. The changing of the guard began, and the crowd surged, and that is when the woman arrived. I want to be fair to her, because I have had years to be unfair to her, and I would like, finally, to put the unfairness down. She was not a monster. She was a particular kind of person we have all met, and most of us have, in some smaller way on some worse day been. She was perhaps 50, expensively dressed, with the kind of confidence that money lays over a person like a coat of lacquer, and she had with her a small entourage, 2 younger people who carried her things and laughed at the right times, and a man who I think was a hired guide or a fixer, someone whose job was to make her morning frictionless. She arrived late to the railing, which meant the good places were taken, and the changing was already underway, the new sentries marching in their slow, stamping cadence across the cobbles, and she could not see, and she was a woman who was not used to not being able to see. She did not start cruel. That is the thing people forget when I tell it. She started merely impatient, merely entitled, merely certain that the world would rearrange itself for her if she pushed against it firmly enough. She moved along the railing looking for a gap, and the best gap, the unobstructed one with the clean sightline straight down the cobbles to the gatehouse, was the place where the old man sat in his chair with his granddaughter crouched beside him. I saw her see it. I saw her measure it. The chair took up the width of 2 standing people, and to her in that moment it was simply an inefficiency, a poorly used resource, a thing in the way of a better thing. She came up behind them with her fixer at her shoulder, and she said in the bright, hard voice of someone who expects to be obliged, "Excuse me, could we just, there's no room to see at all back here, and you're not really using the rail, are you? He can't even," and she did not finish it, because what she had been about to say was he can't even see properly anyway. Asterisk, and even she, I think, heard it coming and swerved. The granddaughter stood up. She was not a large young woman, and she was outnumbered and outmoneyed, and you could see her doing the math of it, the math that the small and the polite do in the face of the large and the certain. "We've been here since before it opened," she said. "My grandfather wanted." "Yes, and we've all wanted," the woman said, the lacquer cracking just slightly, the impatience showing its teeth. "It's a public square. There's no reserved seating. I'm only asking you to be reasonable. He can watch from anywhere, can't he? It doesn't make any difference to him where he is. It doesn't make any difference to him where he is." I have turned that sentence over 1,000 times. The cruelty in it was not loud. It was casual, almost absent-minded. The cruelty of someone who has simply never been required to imagine that an old man in a chair might have come a very long way, at a very great cost to his small remaining strength, to be in this exact place, on this exact morning, looking at this exact thing, for reasons that were the most important reasons left to him in the world. To her, he was scenery that had wandered into the wrong frame. The fixer, sensing his employer's mood, stepped in to help, and that is where it went wrong in the way that mattered. He took hold of the wheelchair's handles, to move it, only to move it. I do not think he meant the rest of it, and he pulled it backward and sideways in one impatient motion to clear the space, and the front wheels caught in the seam between 2 of the old worn cobbles, and the chair jerked and tipped, and the old man, who had no strength to brace himself, who weighed almost nothing, who was held in the chair by nothing but his own frail balance and the cap clutched in his 2 hands, went sideways out of it and down onto the stone. I have to tell this part slowly because it happened fast, and I have spent years making sure I remember it right. He did not fall hard. That is a mercy I am grateful for. He half slid, half toppled, and the granddaughter got a hand under his shoulder so that his head did not strike the cobbles, and he came to rest on his side on the gray stone with his legs still tangled in the footrests of the tipped chair and his cap, the cap he had held the whole time, knocked from his hands and lying a foot away with the little wind of the morning lifting at its brim. His metals scraped the stone. One of them came loose and skittered. He made a sound, a small involuntary sound, not a cry, more like the sound a man makes when something he has been holding very carefully for a very long time is finally, against his will, let go. And the square kept moving around him. That is the thing. The changing of the guard went on. The crowd's eyes were down the cobbles on the marching sentries. The woman had stepped back with a little gasp of her own, a hand to her mouth, the particular performance of a person who is already, in the first half-second, beginning to construct the version in which this was not her fault. The fixer stood frozen with his hands still on the empty handles. The granddaughter was on her knees on the stone, both arms around the old man now, saying his name, saying *Granda, I've got you. I've got you. And there was a ring of strangers around them beginning slowly the way crowds do, to register that something had happened, but no one moved because no one ever knows in the first beat whose job it is to move. And the old man, I will never as long as I live forget this, the old man lying on the stone in pain and shame, his metals scattered, his cap out of reach, turned his head. He did not look at the woman. He did not look at his granddaughter. He turned his head with what was clearly the last of the effort in him toward the alcove, toward the red soldier. He looked at the young man in the long coat the way you look toward the one fixed point in a spinning room, and his pale eyes found him, and his lips moved, and I was close enough. God help me. I was close enough to read what they said, and what they said was not a cry for help and was not a curse, and was not anything I expected. What his lips said was, I'm sorry. He was apologizing to the soldier for falling, for making a mess of the parade ground, for being, on the morning he had come to pay his respects, the one who broke the order of the place. 60 years of soldiering, I would learn, were in that apology, the reflex of a man who had spent his youth standing exactly where the young man now stood, who knew to the bone what it cost to hold a line and what it meant to disturb one. And even now, even broken on the stone, his first thought was not for himself, but for the discipline he had spent his life serving and had just, through no fault of his own, disrupted. Now here is the thing the guide had said. Here is the thing the whole city is proud of. No provocation, none, is permitted to break a Carmen sentry. They do not react. They do not speak. They do not move. Centuries of it, not once in living memory. The young soldier in the alcove had been at attention through all of it. I had been watching him too, because I could not help it, my eyes going back and forth between the fall and the figure in red, and I tell you he had not moved when the woman came. He had not moved when the fixer took the chair. He had not moved when the old man went down. He had stood his eternal stone-still stand and stared at his point above our heads, and let it all happen in front of him, the way the rule said he must, because that is what he was for. Because that is what he had sworn, because the not moving was the whole of his service, and the whole of his service was the whole of him. But when the old man's lips formed the word *sorry*, when this ancient broken soldier lying on the stones apologized to him for the indignity of having been knocked to the ground, something happened in the young man's face. I was looking right at it. It was not a large thing. The world did not see it, not yet. It was the smallest crack in the stone. His jaw worked once, a single tightening at the hinge of it. His eyes, those fixed, unfocused eyes, came down off their point in the middle distance, came down and found the old man on the cobbles, focused on him, saw him. And for one held breath the young soldier and the old soldier looked at each other across 30 feet of empty parade ground, the upright one and the fallen one, and I do not know what passed between them. I will never know. But I know it was enough, because in the next instant the young man did the thing that no Carmen sentry had done in living memory. He broke. He came out of the alcove. He brought his rifle to his shoulder in one clean motion, and he turned, not with a march's slow ceremony but with a quick living human urgency. And he crossed the parade ground at something just short of a run, his boots striking the cobbles in a rhythm that was no drill rhythm at all, but the rhythm of a man going to someone he cannot reach fast enough. The crowd had gone silent now. The changing of the guard had faltered. Even the marching sentries had broken stride. The whole vast machine of the ceremony was grinding to a stop as 1,000 faces turned to watch one red soldier abandon his post and run to a fallen old man. He reached the railing. He did not vault it, which I think people imagine when I tell it. He is a disciplined man, and a disciplined man does not vault a sacred railing even now. He came to the gap, the very gap the woman had wanted, and a path opened for him through the crowd the way water opens, and he came through it and he knelt. He knelt on the cobblestones in his long red coat beside the old man. He set his rifle down, laid it down flat on the stone, carefully, the way you set down something that matters, and he took off one white glove, just one, with his teeth fast, and he put his bare hand against the old man's cheek, and he leaned down close, and he said something. The whole square was silent enough by now that those nearest heard it, and the words ran back through the crowd the way such words do, mouth to mouth, so that within a minute everyone knew what he had said, and I had it from a man beside me who had it from a woman in front of him. What the young soldier said to the old one, kneeling there, his bare hand against that papery cheek, was, "You don't apologize to me, not ever, not you." And then he gathered the old man up off the stones. He did it gently and he did it strongly, both at once, the way a strong, gentle man does a thing. He got one arm under the old soldier's knees and one behind his shoulders, and he lifted him as you would lift something both precious and almost weightless, and he held him for a moment against the red wool of his coat while the granddaughter, weeping now, righted the tipped wheelchair and locked its wheels. And the soldier lowered the old man back into his chair with a care I can only call tender, and he settled the old man's hands on the armrests, and he straightened the loose collar of that good old suit. He retrieved the metal that had skittered loose, and he pressed it back into place over the old man's heart, and his fingers, I saw, were not quite steady doing it. He reached down and he picked up the fallen cap from the cobbles, and he brushed the gray dust from its brim with the flat of his bare hand, twice, 3 times, and he set it back where it belonged, on the old man's lap, into the old man's waiting hands. And then the young soldier stepped back 1 pace, and he put his glove back on, and he came to attention, and he saluted him. He saluted the old man. A full salute, the real thing, the parade ground best of it, snapped up sharp and held. A young guardsman in the red coat of the Carmine Company rendering to a broken old man in a wheelchair the full honors of the regiment, there on the open cobbles in front of the whole world. And I understood, in the way you understand a thing all at once and forever, that the salute was not pity. Pity does not stand at attention. The salute was asterisk recognition. The young man had seen the faded ribbons and the old medal, and the way the old man held his cap, and the way, even falling, he had thought first of the parade, and the young man had known him for what he was, which was one of his own, an elder of the same long brotherhood, a man who had stood the same kind of stand 60 years before any of us were born. The young soldier was not breaking discipline. That is the thing I got wrong in the first telling and have spent years getting right. He was not breaking discipline. He was obeying a deeper one. There is a rule that says do not move, and there is a rule beneath that rule. The first rule exists to serve, and the deeper rule says you do not let one of your own lie in the dust while you stand straight. You do not. You would rather die. And when the 2 rules finally came into conflict on that warm morning, the young man did not hesitate. He chose the deeper one, because the surface rule had only ever been a way of keeping faith with the deep one. And a man who keeps faith with the surface at the cost of the deep has kept no faith at all. The square wept. I am not ashamed to say I wept. The hard woman wept, though her tears were a different kind and she knew it. She had drawn back into her little entourage and she was small now, smaller than the old man in the chair, and she would carry the smallness, I think, for a long time, which is its own justice and the only kind this story has, because no one cuffed her and no one shouted at her and no one needed to. The contrast was the verdict. 1,000 people had watched her treat a man as an obstacle and then watched a soldier treat the same man as a king, and there is nothing you can do, when you are the woman in that comparison, except feel the cobblestones grow very wide and very empty under your good shoes. She left before the end. I do not know where she went. I have never wished her ill exactly, only that the mourning lodged in her the way it lodged in me, and changed her the way it changed me, though I have no way of knowing whether it did. The old man, settled back in his chair, his cap in his hands, his medal straight, looked up at the young soldier holding the salute above him, and his pale eyes were wet, and he did a thing that finished me, that finishes me still. He let go of the cap with one hand. He raised that trembling hand, the bone and the paper of it, up off the armrest slowly with everything he had left, and he returned the salute. Soldier to soldier, the old one to the young one. The hand never quite made it level with the brow. It could not. The strength was not there. It shook in the air at the height of his ear and stopped. But it was a salute. Everyone in that square knew it for a salute. And the young man, seeing the old man's hand fail to rise the last few inches, did the kindest thing I have ever seen one human being do for another. He held his own salute longer, much longer than the form requires, held it, so that the old man would not be the first to lower his hand, so that the old soldier would never have to feel that his salute had been the weaker of the two. He waited. He let the old man finish in his own time. And only when the trembling hand came down to rest again on the cap, did the young soldier bring his own hand down, sharp and final, and turn, and pick up his rifle from the stones, and walk back across the cobbles to his alcove, to his post, to his eternal stand, leaving the parade ground exactly as still as he had found it, as if a stone had stepped down from its niche to perform one act of mercy, and then climbed back up and become a stone again. The changing of the guard resumed. The city's machinery took up its rhythm. Within 10 minutes you would not have known anything had happened, except that everyone who had seen it would know for the rest of their lives. I stayed. The crowd thinned and the buses came and went and the heat climbed, and I stayed at the eastern railing, because the old man stayed, and his granddaughter stayed with him, and the two of them sat in the warm light and watched the soldier in red until the old man was tired, and I did not want to leave them, though I had no claim on them and had not spoken a word to either. When at last the granddaughter began to gather their things to go, I found a courage I do not usually have. The courage of a man who has just watched something holy and cannot bear to walk away from it without touching the edge, and I went to them, and I said I was sorry to intrude, and that I had seen, and that I had never seen anything like it. The granddaughter smiled at me, tired and wet-eyed and gracious, and the old man looked up at me with those pale washed eyes, and he said in his dry rustle of a voice the only words he said to me directly, and I have kept them. 41 years I stood that gate, that very alcove, the same one. He lifted his trembling hand an inch toward the gatehouse. I never broke it, not once. They were so proud of us for never breaking it. He paused, gathering air. I always wondered at the end of a long cold night whether I'd got it wrong, whether the not moving was the point, or only the practice for something I never had to do. His eyes went back to the young soldier in the alcove, and something in his ruined old face came as near to peace as a face can come. Now I know, he said. It was the practice. That boy just showed me what it was the practice asterisk for. He died 8 weeks later. The granddaughter wrote to me. We had exchanged addresses there at the railing, in the strange intimacy of people who have wept in the same place. And she told me he had died in his sleep, easy, that he had spoken of the morning at the gate nearly every day until the end, and that the last clear thing he said was the soldier's name, which he had learned, and which she gave me in the letter so that I could learn it too. His name was Sergeant Aldous Wren, of the Carmine Company, and he was 26 years old, and he was reprimanded for what he did. I learned that part later, going back, reading, asking. There was an inquiry because of course there was, because a Carmine sentry abandoning his post in front of 1,000 witnesses is a thing that must go before a board, and the board found that he had broken the standing orders of the regiment, which he had plainly, and there was a formal note placed in his file. But I learned too, and this is the last thing, and the thing I hold tightest, that the same board in the same hearing declined to impose any further penalty, and that the colonel of the regiment, an old soldier himself, closed the matter with a single sentence that someone present wrote down, and that I have copied into the front of the book I keep about that morning. The colonel said, "A man who would stand his post while one of our own lay in the dust is not the kind of man I want standing it. Note it and let it go. Note it and let it go." I have thought about all of it for years now, the way a man with too much time and not enough company will think a single morning down to its bones. I have thought about the woman, and the kind of blindness money buys, and how easy it is, how very easy, to look at an old man in a chair and see only a thing in the way of a better view. I have caught myself doing it, in airports, in queues, in all the small theaters where we decide 1,000 times a day who is a person and who is scenery, and the morning at the lantern gate reaches into me and turns my head and makes me see. That is the gift the soldier gave me, though he never knew my name and I was only one face in a crowd to him. He gave me the habit of turning my head. And I have thought about the young man himself, Sergeant Wren, standing his cold nights in that alcove before and after, holding the line, doing the not moving, the discipline that the world admires in films and puts on postcards. People love the stillness. They love the man who will not flinch. They take it as the whole of the thing, the way I did in my first hour at the railing, the way the proud city does. But the stillness is not the whole of the thing. The stillness is only the scabbard. What matters is the blade inside it, and the blade is this, that a man should make himself so disciplined, so emptied of his own small wants and reflexes, so wholly given over to a code, precisely so that when the moment comes that asks everything of him, he will not hesitate. The discipline is not for the cold nights. The discipline is for the one warm morning. All those years of standing still were Aldous Wren teaching his own body to obey him absolutely, so that on the day a fallen old soldier said sorry from the cobblestones, the body would not freeze, would not calculate, would not weigh the file and the inquiry and the standing orders, would simply go, fast and clean and sure, to do the one thing a man of honor must do. He did not break his discipline that morning. He spent it. He had been saving it up his whole short career for exactly that, and when it was asked of him he paid it all at once, and it was worth every cold night, and the old man knew it, and now I know it, and now, I hope, so do you. I will tell you what is in the photograph, the one I have framed. It is the old man before the fall in his chair, his cap in his hands, his faded medals on his breast, looking across the empty parade ground at the soldier in the alcove. You cannot see the soldier's face in it. He is too far and too small, a red mark against gray stone. But you can see the old man's face, every line of it, lifted and lit and absolutely at rest, gazing at the young man who does not yet know what he is about to do, who is still in the frame only a statue. Two soldiers across an empty ground, one at the beginning and one at the end, neither of them moving, both of them more alive than anyone else in the square. I look at it every day. I have outlived my wife and most of my regrets, and I am old enough now to fold a little toward the earth myself. And when my time comes, I would like to think someone will see in me what the young man saw in the old one that morning, and will not let me lie in the dust, and will hold the salute the extra moment so that I do not have to be the first to lower my hand. That is the story. That is the part I carry. Not the proud woman's fall, though that is the part they always want. The part I carry is a young man kneeling, and a bare hand on a papery cheek, and a salute held a long, long time over a chair on the cobbles, while a whole city learned what its famous stillness had always, secretly, been for.